Sahib. Sahib.
Hey, Jim, how you doing?
Oh, Steve, I've got a few questions about the script. Can you come over here?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the WTJ Radio Theater. Tonight's presentation is a short drama entitled Author, and is brought to you by Metropolitan Gas Company. When you're cooking with gas, you're really cooking.
A blank sheet of paper. It sits here, staring you in the face. It makes no sound, nor do I. There's no sporadic click of little keys, no corresponding row of little black marks.
And yet, we scream in accusation at you.
I need a cigarette. Feels good to get up. I've been sitting too long. Almost 3 hours and not a word written yet. It's my day off and I don't want to waste it.
Who are you kidding? You've had days off for 6 months now and not written so much as a nonsense string of typing exercises.
Today's different. I've got plenty of ideas. Now sit down and start typing.
The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Oh!
It's just practice. I have to be sure all the keys work properly.
Don't bother to remember last night when you took me apart, cleaned every key, every moving part.
Let's start with a fresh sheet.
What's it going to be, big boy?
Paper. The play about Helen of Troy. I've been thinking about that one for a year. Now's a good time to start. A woman approaching middle age, returning home after a long, passionate affair. How does she act? How does her husband feel? Our family? No, there's no point. Everyone knows the story. Anything I could say would be anticlimactic. People will get the feeling of deja vu and criticize me for being romantic. Leave her on a dusty library shelf.
Coffee?
But what the hell? I need the energy, the stimulation to keep going.
Why do you want to be a writer? I wonder.
I've always been fascinated by books, ever since I can remember.
The mere idea that words and thoughts can be set down on paper for everyone to see.
Mrs. Kelly at her reading circles. In the first grade, she named us all after birds. Bluebirds, cardinals, parrots. She called to the group in turn to read aloud, and she smiled so sweetly when we stumbled and she could correct our pronunciation. You meant well, but Pop taught me to read from the Times. How you frowned when you found out. And while the others were stuttering and stammering, I was always off in the middle of the next story.
Maybe you should write a story about Mrs. Kelly.
Mrs. Kelly, Mrs. Kelly.
I never quite understood her reaction. Maybe I was never in the right place, but I never stuttered either. Didn't you approve of my reading? You sure raised hell with Pop for teaching me.
You were outside the pattern she was taught to accept. First graders weren't supposed to read. They were supposed to stutter and stammer. Coffee's ready.
Now back to the typewriter.
Back to that blank sheet of paper staring at you.
This is ridiculous. The paper is just an inanimate object, and so is the machine.
And yet we demand something of you by our mere presence on the desk.
No! No. Mrs. Kelly won't do. Mediocrity glorified with her memorized lesson plans and her boring little reading groups. Dick and Jane, indeed. I saw them every day on the playground. I didn't want to read about them as well. The Times was much more interesting with stories about strange doings in faraway places. I gave up reading ahead. She gave up calling on me. Forget Mrs. Kelly.
What about the old folks' home? The one where well-meaning relatives send those considered old and useless? A good piece of outraged satire.
What for? I don't know anything about rest homes for the elderly, and youth isn't any better. They weren't stupid, the kids I went to school with. Mrs. Kelly encouraged them to stutter. She needed them to stutter. Otherwise, she had nothing to teach them. No wonder they turned senile at 60. They've lost all curiosity. The girls run off to play house with their dollies, and the boys ran off to be macho man with their guns and their footballs.
Finish your coffee then, and pour another cup, without writing a single word.
It's a relief to get away from that empty page.
Sunshine streaming through the window.
Like that park across the street.
There's a poem to be written about that park. Not quite spring, but a green, shimmering anticipation. So pleasant to stand here looking for a moment. Forget the past. Don't worry about the future. Just enjoy the present because it's bright and cheerful and full of promise.
What promise? That people ever stop stuttering? That another page will sit here tonight staring and empty?
What do you want to write then?
I've got a notebook full of poems, stories, a play. But they always come back with short notes of
praise.
And polite regret.
They're interesting, well-written pieces.
They're too idealistic, too limited in appeal.
You could publish in the university magazines.
The kind that pay in free copies. Free copies don't pay the rent or buy groceries. Who is the publishers publish for? The parents I went to school with? The dainty little girls who skip rope into a suburban kitchen? Or the football players who run into a rat race to pay for all the labor-saving devices?
Perhaps those are the people you should write for.
No, Mrs. Kelly corrected the reading right out of them.
The college professors, then. They no longer stutter.
They just examine the punctuation, exclaim how the vowels interact with the consonants. No. They might as well give up reading for all the sense they make of it. There must be somebody who likes to read.
Your kid brother Howie.
Howie. He was such a clown. He never took anything seriously. He could read the worst stories about government corruption and crime in the streets. and turn anger into laughter. He was going to be an actor. But he's dead now. Killed in the war. They didn't have to send in American troops. How we should be walking in the park with Elaine now.
There's your story. A young man going to war, caught up in the great ideals, the patriotic rhetoric. His wife expecting their first child, the embodiment of those ideals. The growing awareness that he and his fellow soldiers are being betrayed by their officers, and worse, by their leaders back home. The causes are empty slogans to pacify the soldiers as they risk their lives. And at the final moment of awareness, an enemy ambush, a grenade.
It hurts too much. He's too recently dead. It'll have to wait. Isn't there anybody out there? Anybody as gay and perceptive as he was?
Elaine, perhaps. Howie's widow?
She's too busy trying to support herself and a baby.
Howie Jr.?
He's only 10 months old. A potential. I need someone now. Someone that feels like I do, that the world is a great and glorious place.
The white page is still waiting here.
Here comes that nagging headache again. After another day of nothing accomplished. Too many ideas floating in my head. War and peace.
War and peace.
Pain and sorrow.
Love and marriage and politics.
So much.
So much.
Too much. Too much. It's so vague, it's nothing.
So many ideas.
Why can't I bring them into the concrete words of a story?
It's easy enough to write about war through your brother.
Too painful.
Simple enough to satirize complacency through Mrs. Kelly.
Too boring.
And Grandma, she was so delightful in her prime. All ready with a plate of cookies, a trip to the zoo with stories about the animals.
How can I offer them up to strange eyes? The housewives reading themselves to sleep. The commuters killing time on the train.
The park is quiet, and the sun hovers, taking a last look before he sets to rise in other places. The paper droops, despairs of ever being used.
What's the use? I don't care if I ever write another word. Too many wasted days. Too many lonely evenings.
Tomorrow is another day.
Isn't that cliche? Another day of dull routine. Of typing orders and filing invoices. Playing cyborg stud to some bitch of a machine. But the prospect leaves me dead!
He finally starts writing.
To whom it may concern.
police will come.
Summoned, I suppose, by neighbors who smell gas. I should have several manuscripts finished by then, neatly stacked.
Let me see.
Page 1, chapter 1.
A blank sheet of paper.
It sits here, staring you in the face.